Hey guys, we've lost another rock and roll legend and another one of my all-time favorite musicians, Ace Frehley, the original lead guitarist for Kiss. Just a phenomenal guitarist, very unconventional. Um, yeah, he's sort of from the Jimmy Page school of guitar. He was just absolutely incredible, an amazing guitarist who I grew up absolutely idolizing. Um, I grew up a hardcore Kiss fan, as a lot of you know, and I was 10 years old in 1977 when they were at the peak of their popularity and when they were just everywhere. And in 1975 is when I discovered the band with Kiss Alive. I distinctly remember listening to Nothing to Lose. That's the first song I remember listening off Kiss Alive. It just had such an incredible sound, and I gravitated quickly towards the band because it mixed up everything I love: rock and roll, horror movies, science fiction, in particular with Ace Frehley, the Spaceman. Now, as a kid at school, there were a lot of Kiss fans, but there were a lot of people who said Kiss sucks because they didn't get it. Either they just didn't like it in general, gave it a fair shot, or they just saw the makeup, the pyrotechnics, the spectacle, and just wrote them off as not real musicians. But they all could play, great band, have some incredible, catchy songs. And when Love Gun came out, I was so excited. You can see it back there when Ace Frehley finally sang a song, Shock Me. You remember in Alive 2, Paul Stanley says, we're going to turn over the mic to Ace Frehley, Shock Me. And he wrote that as an autobiographical song when he actually got shocked on stage. Very sad at the passing of Ace Frehley. I'm just devastated. And this is so soon on the heels of when Ozzy passed. Now, I didn't get to see Ace Frehley in concert until 1996 during the reunion tour. And it was so great to finally see the original four members, makeup and all, pyrotechnics, great music. They sounded so incredible. And before that, I'd seen Kiss several times before that, but the very first time I saw them was in January of 1984. And news traveled very slowly back then, and there was a lot of rumors. Ace Frehley had left the band for various reasons, and the news of that was kind of murky. He'd left before that, but there was a rumor that he was going to come back with the band and be their guitarist again. Memories are very fuzzy on this, but we were sort of under the assumption that we were going to see all four Kiss original members, including Ace Frehley, and we were surprised to see Vinnie Vincent in 1984, and this would have been the Love Gun tour, I believe. I mean, the Lick It Up tour, and Vinnie Vincent was the guitarist on Lick It Up and famously wrote, half the songs or whatever. But we had heard that Ace was coming back to the band, and as we were teenagers, what did we know? And without the internet and all that stuff, rumors flew like crazy, as they still do. But anyway, we were shocked to see, the screeching guitar from Vinnie Vincent, a talented guitarist too, but it was not our guy, Ace Frehley, so that was a disappointment. But I was so glad to finally see him in 1996. And I'd also got to meet Ace very briefly. He was doing a Comic-Con, and if I can find the picture, I'll post it at the end of this video. And I also want to show you guys something very special I have signed about Ace Frehley, and I'll show you guys that as well. I got to meet him at a Comic-Con, one of these comic book conventions. I believe it was Dallas Fan Expo or one of these. He did an autographing, and he was in a separate room, and I got a quick press photo, and he did the thumbs up that he usually does. But I got to see him live in concert on his solo tour in 2019, pre-COVID, in November of 2019, in Deep Ellum in Dallas at Trees, a legendary nightclub. Me and my friend Johnny, who also grew up worshiping Ace Frehley and Kiss in general, we got to see him play live, and we were just right up close to the band. We were just right at the stage because Trees is a standing room only. We got there early, and we were just a few feet away from watching both of our childhood heroes. Now Johnny, his favorite Kiss member was and still is Gene Simmons, but loved Ace as well. We all loved every Kiss member. Me and all my Kiss loving friends like Bill Pritchett, Johnny Holloway, and David Fry. Way too many to mention. But for me, Ace Frehley was far and away my favorite. And I say far and away because I love every Kiss band member, but Ace was my favorite. When those little buttons came out back in the 70s, Ace was the first one I bought. You can see these are, can you see that dollar on the back? That was a lot for a button back in the late 70s, but I bought Ace. I got $1 a week for allowance, and I bought Ace a whole week is what I got this. And yeah, and I bought the others, but this was the first one I got because Ace was my guy. I love the whole science fiction thing. I love that he was kind of ethereal and loopy and just kind of really magnetic and electric on stage, but in a cool kind of casual way. You know, Paul Stanley was the primary front man with all the lingo and a great, you know, showman. And Gene Simmons stole a lot of the spotlight with the fire breathing and with, you know, the demon makeup and, you know, his spitting blood and all that. But Ace was always my number one hero on the band. Guys, who remembers back in 78, I believe it was, Kiss meets the Phantom of the Park? Very infamous film. And but guys, this was one of the greatest nights of my life, that Kiss was going to come out in a movie on television. And you had to be there at the time and a kid basically to appreciate this. It's not like today and even in the 80s when you would see your, you know, musical heroes on TV all the time, from MTV all the way through YouTube, where you can just access all these concerts and all these amazing things, you know, from history and more recent years. It's just incredible what you have access to now. But back then, you know, we would grasp at anything that had Kiss on it. And back then it was mostly magazines. We'd see them on a cover. I mean, I would buy issues of 16 magazine, Teen Beat magazine, if Kiss was in it. And the rest of the magazine didn't care at all about. But if it had a page or two on Kiss and a cover mention, I was all over it. But Cream magazine, Hit Parader, anything with Kiss on it, completely obsessed. But Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park, a full movie starring my heroes. And I was so excited for that night. And it was on a school night, I believe, if I remember correctly. Anyway, we went to school. I don't remember. Anyway, my school friend David Fry came over because he had religious parents, super religious parents, that thought Kiss stood for Knights in Satan's Service and wasn't going to let him watch the Kiss movie. This was produced by Hanna-Barbera, very harmless movie. I mean, it basically played like a cheesy 50s science fiction movie. But he came over, hardcore Kiss fan, loved him just as much as I did. And he just told his parents he was going to come over and play basketball, as he frequently did. And I'm sure we played some basketball before the movie started. But I was so hyped and so pumped for the concert. You know, and my parents were there. They were in the living room, and we were all going to watch the Kiss movie. And I'm sure they had no interest in it, but they were there and just kind of hanging out. And I remember leading up to the movie, I was so wired and out of my mind about this movie that I kept going down the hallway saying, I'm not going to watch it. And then I would run down the hall, leap into the living room, dive on the floor in front of the TV. I did this a few times. Yes, I was just a little bit excited because you could see Kiss glimpsed on TV periodically. I missed the Paul Lynde special. I didn't see that for some reason. Didn't hear about it. Wasn't aware of it, something. And, you know, you couldn't just watch it later because you saw, you know, it might play again at some point. As a matter of fact, Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park didn't play again, as far as I know, till a year later, like on the nighttime movie at 10:30 or something. So if you weren't home to see Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park, you were screwed. You just wasn't going to be able to watch it for a very long time. So anyway, it was so important to be there. And yes, the movie, I loved it. Sure, would I have liked to see more songs in the movie? Would I have liked for Kiss to just be on the screen the entire time? Sure, but man, I loved it just to see my heroes walking around and talking. And yeah, Ace was saying ack, and it was a silly movie. But man, it was just magical to me. And you really had to grow up during that time to fully appreciate the magic of Kiss. These four band members with those incredible personas, the Star Child, you know, the Spaceman, the Demon, Catman. This was just like nothing else. It was like everything we loved, cartoons, music, movies, everything into one that we absolutely loved. And anything I could find with Kiss on it, I would want. Now I wasn't able to get a lot of the merchandise and memorabilia growing up because I just didn't have the money, but I made sure to buy all the albums, and those are still ones from back in the day. And I remained a Kiss fan throughout all these years, through when they took the makeup off on MTV. That was wild to see. It was kind of a weird, understated event. And by then, Ace and Peter had left the band. Guys, I'm such an Ace Frehley fan that, and my son Ryan will tell you this, that when we go to a restaurant and they say, yeah, what's your name for, we'll call you when the table's ready. A lot of times I'll say Ace, and that is definitely just a little nod to Ace Frehley there. But anyway, so my obsession and fascination with Kiss played out through the decades. I'm always a fan of the band, and I would listen to the new stuff coming out. And yes, my favorite albums are the first 6 studio albums, plus the 2 live albums, and then Dynasty is their 7th solo album. And I love their 7th studio album, and I love the solo albums as well. I love classic Kiss before they took off the makeup. But even post that, Lick It Up and Beyond, I've been a big fan all along. And when they reunited in 96 and came out with Psycho Circus, that was incredibly exciting. It was like being able to experience your childhood, kind of some things you missed out on. Like I didn't get to see the band live back in the day, and then I could afford some of the toys and merchandise coming out, as an adult. And I was so excited about that. Anyway, I kept up my Kiss fandom for so long, and to this day, a hardcore fan, after Ozzy, and Someday the Stones, Kiss is right up there as my favorite band of all time. Just barely a notch beneath Ozzy. And depending on what day you ask me, the Stones are right there too. The Stones might be my desert island band because of so many albums and the variety and everything. And you can say the same thing about Kiss. Incredible longevity, tons of albums, but Kiss is right there. It's hard to pick them. Stones, Kiss, and then Ozzy, but they're right there as one of my favorite bands of all time. As a matter of fact, a few years ago, I was reading Kiss autobiographies, a number of them, including Ace Frehley, and I thought, when I was reading these books, I thought nobody had ever done a Kiss encyclopedia before. So I pitched the idea to my publisher, and lo and behold, a couple of years later, Encyclopedia of Kiss. And I'll show you that not as some kind of sales pitch or anything. That was completely a labor of love. I just want to show you that I was just such an amazing, hardcore, obsessed Kiss fan that I wanted to document their entire career, their television show appearances, their albums, their songs, their memorabilia and all that stuff into book form in alphabetical order, sort of an OCD collector's guide to Kiss, or just fan's guide to Kiss, more like it. But I've got a few other things. This isn't really the video to just show off, like my whole Kiss collection or anything, but I still have my original copy of Ace's 1978 Kiss solo album. This means the world to me. Love this shirt as well. But yeah, this is my original copy. And one of my favorite albums of all time. When the Kiss solo albums come out, a lot of that was kind of a divisive situation because the band was sort of arguing a lot. We didn't know all that back then. But in retrospect, the band was unhappy, and there was a lot of internal problems. There's a variety of reasons. We won't get into those now. We're mostly just honoring and remember the greatness of Ace Frehley, just one of the greatest guitarists of all time. I got a couple of his solo albums here, and I've got more Ace Frehley stuff. But gosh, Kiss Meets the Fandom, just seeing him walking around and talking. Anyway, guys, this has been a tough one. Please let me know in the comments your opinions on Ace Frehley and just Kiss in general. And if you're not a fan of the band, you have to admit their incredible legacy and just how influential they were on so many other bands. Dave Grohl, Metallica, Tom Morello. I could list hundreds of musicians, many of them very famous, Kiss influenced thousands and thousands and thousands of kids to pick up a guitar, a microphone, a pair of drumsticks. Next to the Beatles and a couple of others, the Stones, Kiss is one of the most influential bands of all time. And a lot of that was just based on kids thinking they were so cool they wanted to play an instrument themselves or dress up like them for Halloween. And they're the most merchandised band of all time, with the possible exception of the Beatles. I've heard the Beatles were the most merchandised band of all time, and Kiss second. But Elvis is probably up there somewhere. But anyway, just an incredible band. And one thing I've heard about the band is there were only two bands in rock and roll history where the core group, the Beatles, it was just four of them. And then Kiss, for the long time, it was just four of them. But every single band member was a household name. Every single band member had their own set of hardcore fans. Every single band member had their own, just really super distinct persona. So Kiss has a lot of parallels with the Beatles. As a matter of fact, Gene Simmons had talked about, wanting to be a heavy metal Beatles, where every band member sang, every band member got the spotlight, every band member got to express themselves equally, more or less, on stage. Just every band member got the spotlight. And so yeah, and Gene will tell you, they weren't the Beatles. They weren't you could argue that their songwriting and musicianship and all that stuff, sure, from a technical sense, the Beatles, sure, of course. And the Beatles are one of my favorite bands of all time. But if you want a harder edge, Kiss is your band. Absolutely love Kiss, and Ace Frehley in particular. Rocket Ride, and so many great songs. And I was so good. He wrote songs, early in Kiss's career, but it wasn't until Love Gun when he took the microphone, and I was so glad he did, because he had so many great songs after that. 3 songs on Dynasty, and just a bunch throughout the years. I mean, even on on some of their later popular albums, I even like those songs, like Three Sides of the Coin. And on the Music from the Elder, he's got a great tune on there. Just love me some Ace Frehley, one of my favorite musicians of all time, right up there with Randy Rhoads and Ozzy Osbourne. So yeah, this was a tough one. Hate to hear it, and just condolences to all the Kiss fan group is hardcore. You will not meet a more devoted, more dedicated group of fans than the Kiss Army. I mean, just hardcore. And there's so many Kiss stories. Invading Cadillac, Michigan, and back in 75, when it's the 50th anniversary this year, when they took over a whole town and joined with the local high school. Guys, I will leave a link to that incredible story where they just got the key to the city by it's a long story, but long story short, they went to this small town in Cadillac, Michigan, and the high school just adopted them, and they played a concert at that high school. And they were there because the football team had been struggling. And when the coach started playing rock and roll, specifically Kiss, in the locker room to pump them up, they won the rest of their games of the season. Anyway, long story. It's incredible. There are so many stories throughout the year. They're one of the most storied and most interesting bands of all time. They do have some Spinal Tap elements to them, which is just part of their charm. Anyway, I could go on all day talking about the brilliance of Ace Frehley, his excellent musicianship, but the main thing I wanted to get across here was just growing up, he was just one of my childhood heroes. I mean, there was Dr. J, there was Mr. Spock, there was Ace Frehley, there was Johnny Fever, and Ace Frehley, he might have been the one. He had it all, man. He was the greatest. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Share with me your Ace Frehley stories. Did you ever meet him? Were you a fan? What's your favorite Ace Frehley song? There are so many. Speeding Back to My Baby from his solo album. Anyway, I could go on all day, but it's hard to me to piece all this together because I'm a little verklempt. I couldn't even think of the song off off of the Music from the Elder, Dark Light. Anyway, I guess I'll leave it here, guys. So thanks for watching, and share your Ace Frehley stories. Again, condolences to just an absolute guitar god. I mean, if you have the pantheon of guitar gods, I mean, you've got Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck, Eddie Van Halen. Guys, you've got to put Ace Frehley up there somewhere. Randy Rhoads. Ace Frehley is, if you've got the Mount Rushmore, if you add maybe a couple to that Mount Rushmore, you've got Ace Frehley right there, guys. So yeah, just a legend. All right, guys, we'll talk to you later. And there's the signed poster I got, Ace Frehley from his Space Invader album. My friend Bill Pritchett bought me that when we went to go see him in concert. So yeah, Ken Kelly art, which is awesome because Ken Kelly also did the art for Love Gun and Destroyer. So yeah, that's very special to me. Thank you, Bill, for that item.